If you're reading the Bible, you'll notice that sometimes the scriptures doesn't match with the chapter. And you always trying to figure out, is there something missing? Like a whole story is not, saying everything. And I felt like that with the story of Abraham and Sarah. There was a lot of missing parts, and Lamech and his two wives. There was a lot of missing parts. So I realized that the Bible were like ancient scrolls that were all put together and they don't match. And so I did an example of the end of Genesis 1 where chapter 2 starts. You have to read verse 31 and pretend the chapter doesn't end and just keep going. When you get to the end of the verse 3, insert chapter 2 there. Pretend you're starting a new chapter with verse 4 and read the first few verses. Then you got to see what you notice. And I notices that Genesis 2 and 4 is the beginning of a second creation story. And the chapter breaks and is moved so that it isn't so obvious. The order of the creation doesn't match Genesis 1. Adam comes first, plants second. Animals are only created because Adam needed a partner. Eve was only created because the animals weren't good. And Genesis 2 can't work with Genesis 1 because chapter 2 gives specific reason why each creation happened. Whew, I know that was a mouthful, but I've been doing a lot of studies. So what I'm pointing out is the most controversial and profound observation in the entire Torah narrative. So I'm going to walk you through it step by step. And I'm going to be using close reading of Genesis 1:31 through 2 and 4, and then continue to Genesis 2:5 through 25. And I'm going to identify what's inconsistent, what's different, and what this means in terms of textual history, theology, and prophetic symbolism. And I'm getting a little deep on you. So this is kind of be a Bible scholar study, okay? So step 1, read Genesis 1:31 through 2 and 3 without a chapter break. In Genesis 1:31 through 2 and 3, and I'm going to read it out the Sefer. And Elohim saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, Elohim ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that is in it he had rested from all his work which Elohim created and made. This is clearly the conclusion of the first creation account, with Elohim creating the world in 6 days and resting on the seventh day. No chapter break is needed here. The narrative naturally concludes at verse 3 is a completed literally unit. Step 2, start a new chapter at Genesis 2 and 4 as if beginning a second story. In Genesis 2, 4 through 7 in the Sefer, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that Yahuwah Elohim made the earth and the heavens, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. For Yahuwah Elohim had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. And Yahuwah Elohim formed a man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils and breathed life, and man became a living soul. So what did you notice when I read that? So here are some clear differences between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. So Genesis 1, Elohim creates light, sky, land, plants, animals, and then mankind. In Genesis 2, Yahuwah Elohim creates man first, then plants, then animals. In Genesis 1, man and women are created together in Genesis 1 and 27. In Genesis 2, Adam is created first, Eve comes much later. In Genesis 1, Elohim speaks creation into being, let there be. In Genesis 2, Yahuwah Elohim forms plants, breathes, and more hands-on. In Genesis 1, everything created was very good. In Genesis 2, some things are not good. Adam was alone, Genesis 2 and 18. Oh my goodness. In Genesis 1, no reason is given for creating things, just order. In Genesis 2, reasons are given. Man needs a helper, no one to till the ground, etc. The key observation, two different names for the creator. Genesis 1 uses Elohim and Genesis 2 uses Yahuwah Elohim. This change hints at two different traditions or sources being merged, known in scholarly circles as the Elohist E and Yahwist J sources in the Deuteronomy hypothesis. The two different orders of creation. In Genesis 1, the order is light and darkness, sky, firmament, dry land, plant, sun, moon, stars, fish and birds, animals, man and women together, male and female. In Genesis 2, the implied order is earth and heavens, verse 4. No plants yet, verse 5. Man formed from dust, verse 7. Garden planted after man, verse 8. Animals formed after man to find a helper, verse 19. Eve created after animals failed to be a partner, verse 22. This is a major narrative reversal. And Genesis 2 is not a summary of Genesis 1. Many tried to harmonize the two by saying Genesis 2 is a recap, but it cannot be because the order is different. The tone is different. The motivation for creation is explained in Genesis 2, not in Genesis 1. Genesis 2 introduces narrative storytelling. Genesis 1 is poetic and structured. What's really going on? Textual explanation. Biblical scholars agree these are two ancient creation traditions. In Genesis 1, 1 through 1 and 2 through 3 is from the priestly P source, emphasizing structure, order, Elohim, and Sabbath. Genesis 2 and 4 through 25 is from the Yahwist J source, more earthy, relational, and anthropomorphic. All these big words. These were likely combined intentionally by scribes, not to deceive, but to preserve both traditions. But the chapter division hides the shift to make it seem like one flowing narrative when it's really two distinct accounts. The theological and prophetic implication. Genesis 1 shows Yahuwah's power and order, the universal Elohim of all creation. Genesis 2 reveals Yahuwah's personal relationship with mankind, the covenant creator of Israel. It's not just a different order, it's a different relationship between the creator and humanity. So, the spiritual symbolism, the creator, universal cosmic Elohim in Genesis 1, and in Genesis 2, relational and covenant Yahuwah. Creation method in Genesis 1 is the spoken word. In Genesis 2 is hands-on forming and breathing. Humanity in Genesis 1 created male and female simultaneously. In Genesis 2, Adam first, Eve later. In the message, Yahuwah is sovereign over all in Genesis 1. And in Genesis 2, Yahuwah is intimate with man. So what is the big deal? Is there any confusion? You're absolutely right. Genesis 2 and 4 is the beginning of a second creation story, and the chapter break is strategically placed to make it look like a continuation, when in fact it starts a whole new account with different motivation, sequence, and divine name. So most believers read Genesis passively, assuming everything fits perfectly, but Yahuwah invites us to dig deeper. In Proverbs 25:2, it is the glory of Elohim to conceal a matter, but the honor of kings is to search out the scriptures. I hope that wasn't too much for you. I'm still asking questions, so there's going to be a part 2 on this.